and welcome. Raise Your Game today. I'm David Levin. This is our Friday episode, so we're talking all things inner game. Tuesdays are for sports and sports parenting. Fridays are for everything and everyone, and we are back. My goodness, been a heck of a break. Sorry for being away so long, but it was just unavoidable. We'll talk more about the break later, but it is good to be back. So how are you today? Been a little while. How are things with your inner game? You're feeling good, I hope. Maybe stressed out. It happens. Worried. What's going on for you? For me, things are really very good. Back from the break again. The big thing, feeling healthy. Knock on wood. Lots of things and work on my mind, but getting back in the groove, and it just feels really good. So, some things to talk about today. My ups and downs for the week. A great perspective that helps during troubled times. The rebellion in Russia, that crazy thing, and how to think about news like that. A really good, just wonderful gratitude exercise, different from the last one we talked about. A bit about parenting teams, our weekly challenge, and some great new recommended items for the week. So I'll start with my ups and downs, what things were lifting me up this past week, and what things were pulling me down, making life harder. In the ups column for me this week, the big one is just getting back into the groove, as I mentioned. You probably know we were out of the country the past 2 weeks, and of course that was fantastic. Biggest trip we've ever taken by a long shot. 4 nights in London, 5 nights in Paris. I've never been to either place. Just such a great trip, which is not to say it was all easy, because it definitely wasn't travel. Never is, at least not for me. It was super hot there, really strangely hot. We were staying in Airbnbs. Both cities were like 4 floors up, no air conditioning, no elevator. I mean, lots of steps, my goodness. The travel days were super long and exhausting. Both cities, I loved them, but they were also pretty overstimulating. But that's just part of travel, right? And the ups overall were much greater than the downs. We just had a great time. Everyone enjoyed it. Tons of memories. Excellent all around. And also, great to be back. It's funny how hard it is to switch gears, not just like from there to here, but just from like work mindset to vacation mindset. I thought for sure I'd get some little work things done on the trip, just a couple things around the edges, but I didn't do anything. And not because I chose not to. I just forgot. I had no brain space for it. I was totally taken up and consumed with just what it took to be there. It was very interesting. The last day or two, I was able to pull myself back, get a little bit focused, send a couple of emails, but that was it. And on the flight home, I worked the whole way there. But that was really interesting to observe too. And then coming back into the office, the work brain space is a very specific kind of state, and it really takes some time and attention to get back into it. At least for me anyway, maybe at my age, I don't know, but it was definitely noticeable. Also, coming back from the Austin trip a couple weeks earlier, I had some big ideas, as you hope to do, coming back from a conference like that, ideas for things I want to change in the business. Super excited about those. Fairly involved projects, but as you also might remember, I got sick when I came back the whole week back. And then we took the trip for 2 weeks. So all those ideas have piled up and were feeling just very overwhelming. Couldn't even get my head around what needed to be done. But after a few days this week, I'm starting to get it sorted out, making some progress, and that's feeling a lot better too. Another thing, between being sick 3 times in a row and my Austin trip last month and this Europe trip, I hadn't been to the gym in a month. And at my age, that means almost starting over, like for real. So I did hit the gym this week, which felt great, but oh my God, was I sore afterwards. I can barely move sometimes. And I'm actually fine with it because I'm so happy to be back doing it. But wow, that's really something too. So anyway, I guess those are both my ups and downs. All the stuff around getting back into the groove after a long and pretty intense time away. So those are my ups and downs this week. Next up, our quote of the week. Okay, our quote of the week. This week, we'll hear from Duke Ellington. Duke Ellington was just a huge figure in music all around the world, really. He was a jazz pianist, band leader in the early to mid 20th century. And his quote is, "Gray skies are just clouds passing over." Gray skies are just clouds passing over. It's such a helpful perspective to have. And first of all, I just sort of love, the way it's phrased. You can tell he's a songwriter. But more importantly, it's the perspective. Things can be hard, right? It can be dark, but they pass. They always do. That's the piece we need to keep in mind. Gray skies pass. This applies to me with my nasty string of being sick lately. You get to a point where you start to think, will I ever be healthy again? And of course you will, but you start to wonder, and then it passes and you're back. I'm watching this tennis series again, Breakpoint, and it's so powerful. These players, the best in the world, dreamed of this their whole lives. They get their big chance in a final and they lose. And it's heartbreaking. They're just so defeated. Can I ever do it? Am I just not good enough? And then it passes. They go on. Golf. I just heard this week a great line. I think it was a caddy for one of the top pros. He said, basically, every pro golfer is 2 bad swings away from saying, I'm going to quit. But they don't. The dark skies pass, and they go on. So that's why I love this so much. It's just super helpful when things get hard. Gray skies are just clouds passing over. From Duke Ellington, our quote of the week. All right, think about that. We'll move on to our top stories. Okay, top stories. This week, I want to talk about this crazy rebellion in Russia. You probably heard about this, where the head of the Wagner Group, which is an independent mercenary group, just a nasty group, by the way, nothing really much to celebrate there, but it looks like they started this march on Moscow, going after the generals, maybe after Putin, we didn't know at the time, got within like 100 miles or so, shot down some aircraft, super serious, and then they just stopped. They turned around, they negotiated a deal, the leader went to Belarus, who knows what's going to end up happening. Crazy story. Now, I don't know anything about this other than what I heard on the news, but what I really wanted to talk about was the mental process I was going through as the news came in. First, I was absolutely glued to my computer pretty much all day. I knew this was clearly historic, had no idea where it would go. The whole thing, could just blow up like the Berlin Wall coming down. I mean, it was just unbelievable to think about. So I was all over that. And here's the piece I wanted to talk about. The whole time, I was also super skeptical of what I was seeing. Is this for real? Is this picture what it claims to be? Is this video for real? It was so shocking and potentially explosive. And everything I was getting was coming in real time. I was just very tuned in to not taking anything at face value as it was happening. And not in a conspiracy sort of way. It's not like, I thought, well, I knew better. That's not my instinct. I was just very aware that things might not be what they seemed in the moment. So I was just being very cautious with what I was hearing. It even occurred to me that the whole thing might just be staged, right, to somehow help Putin. I couldn't think of how, but I didn't know. It just seemed so impossible to be what it appeared to be. So I was taking it all in, but reserving judgment at the same time. And already, that's turned out to have been a good idea. The story has changed quite a bit from the beginning. I assume it will keep changing as we hear more details, more reporting. Another big part of this had to do with trusting the information I was getting. Say what you will about the New York Times and the Washington Post, for example, but they are professional journalists with professional standards. They verify that information is accurate or say what it's not, or if they can't verify it. And that matters. So I really did feel like I could trust the information I was getting. It was just coming in too quickly to trust it was the whole story. It reminds me, too, of the critical importance of having leaders who are thoughtful and serious people. There was this funny line this week, unrelated, from Liz Cheney, who said that the problem we're having now is that we're electing idiots. It made me laugh, but it's so true, and you see it in times like this. When serious things happen, you need serious people in charge. I remember with COVID, when that was first coming out, well, actually through the whole thing, Trump and his team just completely failed to deal with that in any sort of serious, helpful way. They politicized it, which was just insane. They downplayed it. It was a nightmare, and it made things way worse than it should have been. With the war in Ukraine now, again, can you imagine if we didn't have serious people in charge? It really matters. And we need to be the same in our own lives. When we're facing a challenge, we need to bring our best, most thoughtful, insightful, creative selves to it, or we'll only make it worse. So that's sort of a tangent from the news of the rebellion, but that's what struck me about it, the whole idea of how to be an engaged but still cautious and thoughtful and responsible consumer of information. And it felt sort of important, so there you have it. That's what we talked about this week. All right, our top story for the week. Next up, Inner Game Gold. All right, Inner Game Gold. These are the ideas and concepts I come back to over and over to help me stay on track. This week, I want to look again at a gratitude exercise. We've talked about another one from Sam Harris a couple times. I'm not sure if we've done this one before, maybe once. But anyway, this is something I do now and then, and it ties in pretty well to my feelings recently of getting sick and getting back to normal, not being sick anymore, all of that. So anyway, the idea is, you imagine yourself having recovered from some sort of serious injury or just being really sick. Something where you've lost some core capability and now it's back. And you're noticing that and celebrating it. For example, you're driving along and you think, wow, I can do this again. I can sit up. I can grip the wheel. I can see the road. I can hear what's going on. I can move my arms, my shoulders, everything's working, and it's just on and on like that. You observe yourself doing an everyday task, even if it's just sitting in a chair, and you celebrate being able to do the most basic things as if you couldn't do them before. I can sit up on my own. I can breathe without it hurting. I can move my neck, and you feel the genuine joy you would feel in that situation. I love this exercise. It's easy to do, and it really reminds me of all the simple things, and there's just so many of them that I have, simple things I have to be genuinely thankful for, because I would be so thankful if I'd lost them, and now I have them back. Make sense? All right, that's our Inner Game Gold this week. Another great gratitude exercise. Next up, raise your outer game. Okay, raise your outer game. This is where we talk about the things we care about in our outer life, our health, our relationships, our finances. This week, I want to talk about parenting. Quite a bit of my energy lately has been on my role as a parent, so it's on my mind. And it's interesting because it's so different in the different phases, right? When they're younger, it's basically about managing all the tasks, getting out the door to school, getting them fed, getting them to bed, being with them, just all that great young kid stuff. And I really did love all of that. But now, as they're older, it's completely different. They're getting themselves out the door now, assuming they get up, which might take a little help now and then. They're getting themselves to their job and driving and transitioning into being independent adults. And that's crazy, and I also love it. But I'm thinking lately about the kind of people they are, about how truly good they are. And that's not just me talking as their dad. As they get older, you see more and more the person that's emerging, and it really is something. They are fair and caring and thoughtful. They're responsible, empathetic, honest. It's crazy, really, and it makes me wonder how it happened. And I don't mean like, it was unlikely or a surprise, but just technically, Where do they get it? How do they learn to be that way? I heard a parenting question on another podcast I really loved, which was, how do you teach your kids morality if you're not religious in some way, if you don't have a moral tradition of some kind to teach them? Now, of course, I question the premise of that. Yes, religions, present as having a moral foundation, but the practices are very often not things I associate with morality. But it's still a very interesting question. How do you teach your kids morality? So here's my sense of it, and I expect you have seen the same things in your life. The main thing is, you don't actually need to. Kids are inherently moral on their own because they're naturally empathetic, and empathy is the foundation of morality. I mean, of course, there are hiccups, especially at first, right? They'll hit or bite someone at preschool, and that's not great. But then they'll get hit back or bit back, and there comes the empathy. Oh, that doesn't feel good. I don't want that, don't like that. I shouldn't do that to them either. Kids are naturally empathetic, and empathy is the root of morality. When you can put yourself in someone else's place and understand what they're feeling, pretty much everything you need for a moral foundation naturally grows from that, and it all falls right into place. There's also, of course, their environment. If their parents model empathy and fairness and all that, their school and friend community play a role. Again, setting the norms. Here's how we do things around here. Here's how we do things in our community. But I don't believe either of those play nearly the role we think they might. There's more and more research around this. The bottom line is, how do we teach our kids morality? We don't. They develop it naturally on their own. At most, it's reinforced by seeing us and the people in their life practice it. But even then, they'll still develop their own sense of what's right and how to act. It's just innate to a normal, healthy human adult. I really believe that. Anyway, all that is subjective, of course. I'm not an expert, but I've not seen any evidence to the contrary in my life. All the kids I know, they naturally get it. And I think that's lovely and fascinating and something of a relief for parents. We don't have to teach them morality. They will get it and get it right on their own. Anyway, that's our outer game for this week. Next up, our charging station challenge. Okay, our charging station challenge. Last time, a month ago now, we talked about amor fati, love the fates, love your life, no matter how it's going, the good, the bad, love all of it. I'm still thinking about that. Actually, it's still kind of alive in me, and I'm pretty inspired by it. But anyway, this week, I want to spend some time with the gratitude exercise I mentioned earlier. So just to repeat, the exercise is, you sit for a minute, you imagine that you've just regained some basic physical ability that you had lost for a while, and you celebrate and really feel how great it is to have it back. So again, you're driving, for example, you think, I can do this again. I can sit up. I can grip the wheel. I can see the road. I can move my arms. And it's just like that. So this week, once a day, do that. I think you'll really enjoy what it does for you. And then, of course, share your experience in the community. If you're not in the community yet, there's a link below. It's free. It's a great place to connect with like-minded people. Log in. You can go straight to the challenge. We'd love to hear from you. And that's it for this week's Charging Station Challenge. Next up, highly recommended. Okay, so these are the things I'm crazy about right now. Books, shows, gadgets, things I love and recommend, or maybe just reviewing. This week I have a few new items that I love. The first is a TV show. It's not new, it's just new to me. Our son actually got us watching this while we were in Paris. It's called Clarkson's Farm. Clarkson's Farm. I think it's on Amazon Prime. If you don't know, the host, Jeremy Clarkson, he's a long-time TV host and celebrity in Britain, normally associated with cars, fast cars, racing cars, all kinds of stuff like that. He had a long-running show, I'm not even sure if it's still going, called Top Gear. I understand he also hosts the UK version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which is interesting, but you get the sense of the kind of star he is. So this show, Clarkson's Farm, he decided to buy a farm and try to make it work. It's like 1,000 acres. He's going through, every week it's a different adventure. And it's just adorable. He's funny. It's very British. It's sort of like the Great British Baking Show, but with farming. And he's just a wonderful host. So I recommend that. We instantly fell in love with it. We're about 4 episodes in now, and I expect we'll keep going all the way through that. I mentioned Silo a couple of times, the sci-fi show on Apple TV. Man, still so great. Season finale's coming up this week. Can't wait for that. Have totally loved that show. The tennis documentary I mentioned on Netflix, Breakpoint, it stopped in a weird place like halfway through, but it started up again. And I'm just so in love with it. The things these players go through, the brutal pressure and emotional struggle at that level, especially because it's a solo sport. They're out there by themselves. It's just intense and heartbreaking, something else. And, they get their heart broken, they get knocked down, and they go on, right? Like we were talking earlier, they somehow find a way to keep going and performing at that top level. It's just so beautiful to me and inspiring. Highly recommended for that too. And then a book as well. I've mentioned before the series by, it's by John Sanford. The main character is Lucas Davenport. I think the last time I mentioned it was with a new series of his featuring Lucas's daughter, Letty. But I just finished what I think is the latest in his Lucas series. The book's called Extreme Prey. And they're just perfect if you like crime mysteries. Perfect characters, great writing, not too dark, but, intense enough, funny, fast-paced. Really could not ask for more in that genre. Highly recommend that as well. So, there's 2 new shows and a book this week. Pretty good. Of course, links to all those and everything we talk about in the show notes. And that's it for this week's show. So good to be back with you. Really enjoyed it. It's funny. It's not like we're actually together, but it feels like that. Anyway, if you like what you heard, please do tell your friends, invite them to join us, and rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. It helps more people find the show and get the mental game charge we all need. If you have teenagers in sports, check out our Mental Game Starter Kit. It's a great set of resources. Get started on the path of helping your child boost their mental game. Go to raiseyourinnergame.com, scroll to the bottom. You can learn about it, register there. All free, of course, super helpful. Resources free there. If you'd like to support the show so we can keep things ad-free, please click the Buy Me a Coffee link below, and thank you for that. For more mental game goodness, please join our free community, the Raise Your Inner Game Charging Station. Click the link here. It's totally free. I think you'll love that. If you're listening to this on audio, but you like video, we post all our episodes on our YouTube channel as well. There's a link to that in the show notes. And finally, we'll close with Leo Tolstoy, the quote from him at the end of the Raise Your Inner Game book. He says, "The ultimate purpose in life is to serve humanity." That's what we're doing. We're serving the people in our lives. It's super important. So keep up the good work, and we'll see you next time.